I'd like to start with China straight away because in your career, you held various positions in which you were responsible for intelligence in regards to the Indo-Pacific. And so you know more about China and the threat to Taiwan than almost anyone else, or definitely than most people. And shortly after you left the Navy, you published this very widely shared article on War on the Rocks, where you warned of a growing threat of war in the Indo-Pacific. And you actually mentioned in the article that many analysts are quite skeptical of this, and they believe that especially now, China is too preoccupied with domestic challenges and that it will have to give up on this idea of trying to seize Taiwan by force. And you had you have quite a different view. And so I think a good way to start is if you could describe sort of your thesis on why you think that the risk of a conflict is bigger than most people might think, and the main reasons why you believe so.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Simply put, I take Xi Jinping at his word. He has outlined a grand strategy for China. He's pursuing it aggressively using all means. And a key component of that grand strategy to achieve the Chinese rejuvenation, or the dream, as they call it, is to recover Taiwan and to annex, assimilate, bring it back into their sovereign fold. And that is a fundamental political objective for Xi Jinping. And he talks about it all the time and has for years. So he has set out that they're going to do this because it's an essential part, not an optional part, an essential part of achieving that dream before 2049. So you might say, well, I've got 24, 25 years to work this out. Don't worry about it. And the issue is that if you take a look at the investments and the preparation for war, it's happening in every sector of Chinese society. You have a lot of people that just want to whistle through the graveyard with some of these facts. The Chinese are insulating their economy to a degree that is truly massive. And it's not just because we're friendshoring and de-risking. It's just a smart economic choice right now. They know what the Western playbook looks like because we used it against Russia after they invaded Ukraine. And they said, oh, how do I actually prepare to face that same playbook? You wouldn't have to worry about that or take steps, which are multiple years of steps, if you weren't thinking about doing something that would actually cross an international red line, which is trying to commit aggression against a neighboring government. And that's what Xi Jinping has been saying all along. And if you just take a look at the military growth, the 2027 deadlines for the amount of threshold capability that he wants the PLA to grow to be able to execute options, including Taiwan contingencies, you have to take this seriously. And I think that most people are looking for an excuse not to have to grapple with this reality.
I think maybe to play the devil's advocate here and to oppose your argument a little bit, there's this opinion that I've heard repeatedly, which basically says that Xi Jinping or China would invade if they felt that China does have a big enough advantage over the US and that it would be successful. But the thing is that China might never actually get there, and it will never be in a position where it would have this sufficient advantage. And so the risk is very low since no one, and Xi especially, wouldn't start a war from a position of weakness or from a position where he's weaker than the United States. I wonder what would be your view on that?
Yeah, first of all, look, so Xi Jinping is a pragmatic risk taker. He is more risk accepting than any other Chinese leader since Mao Zedong. But he's also not sort of emotionally driven the way that Mao was a little irrational. He's very rational. So he would like to be able to achieve the assimilation of Taiwan at the lowest possible cost to China's other major goals. And so thus he's put a lot of stock into trying to shape the environment using a combination of information, economic, and military, so-called gray zone tactics to be able to influence politics on Taiwan, to be able to make the DPP, the Democratic Progressive Party, currently led by President Lai, make it look like it's charting a path towards danger and violence, and that Taiwan's real future should rest in people in politics in Taipei who are more inclined to warm relations with China and ultimately come back into the fold of the motherland. But those tactics are going to have limited impact. So he's not given up on those. That's what you see today because, number one, he doesn't feel like the PLA is fully ready. But number two, the conditions just aren't right yet. There are lots of things. When you take a look at what a war decision looks like, you'd have to look at a number of different things. And it's not just correlation of military forces. That's an important component, as in comparing China to Taiwan, China to Taiwan plus the United States, China plus Taiwan, the United States, and Japan. Those kinds of calculations are not the sole factor, right? You have to take a look at what's happening internationally, how many countries are more leveraged by China, therefore unwilling to really hurt China if they go forward with Taiwan. It's the domestic conditions within the United States. Do you have a president that's not willing to go to war over Taiwan? We have different views on that with our presidential candidates now. You have to take a look at a number of things domestically that are happening with Xi Jinping. Is he feeling like his position is consolidated, or are there risks there for him politically when it comes to the domestic environment around him? And so there are many more factors than one might conclude when you're just trying to talk about it very simply. And so all of those things need to be weighed and calculated. But sometimes people get the temporal part of it a little bit wonky. So we have some economic headwinds that China is facing today, and clearly they have troubles. They have systemic structural troubles. But at the same time, they've had them for 10, 20 years now. They've been managing these things. Some of them will come home to roost in very, very sharp ways. And the Chinese double-digit growth years are probably over for good, right? But if you take a look at the numbers and how things are working out, the Chinese economy is still closing on the U.S. economy. And you don't have to have an excessive our GDP to convert what you have in terms of national resources into different areas of capability. So, for example, China has been going gangbusters with investing in the military, right? And other security elements, right, to that particular nation. And so they're choosing to spend their earnings in a way that's created this massive military, right? And if you compare it to our investment in the Indo-Pacific, look, we talked about the pivot, we talked about the rebalance for many years. We've put, billions of dollars into this. We've gotten more recent energetic activity, and that's all good. But the Chinese have way more invested in this, and therefore they have way more power at their disposal near to their borders than we have. And that's a major issue.